Hey, well, I don't know what the value of these are. Some people have given some positive responses, but some, I don't know, they don't get a lot of views, so it's kind of hard to tell how well they're gonna, uh, how useful they're gonna be to anyone. Anyway, let's go on with 19th century. We're about halfway through it, and we're on to the ACW, the American Civil War. And like I was saying at the end of the last video, it's funny because I took a science and technology and literature class or in law or something like that. For whatever reason, the discussion of, well, what great technological leaps were made to make the American Civil War what it was. And it's funny because the guy who was teaching the class was of the opinion that it was the machine gun. Now, the machine gun is almost unimportant here. What is important was the breech-loading rifled gun, the machined gun, not the machine gun. But probably the most important aspect of it all was the supply lines fed by the railroads. The railroad was the hugest change there. You could now have these huge armies, not living off of river lines or coastal supply, but actually with an organized supply route that it was far greener than anything. I mean, the Napoleonics tried to push supply over normal roads. Well, with the railroad, you could push the supply to an army that was the size of an entire Napoleonic invading force in a much smaller front. Okay. So here we have some major series or styles. Big one, Gamers again, Civil War Brigade series. And then I have the regimental sub-series games as well. I haven't played a single one of them yet. But just this whole series, and especially out of them, Thunder at the Crossroads, Gettysburg game. Gettysburg, for me, is the battle of the American Civil War and the one you most want to study, or the one that's most interesting to me. But the entire series, with its written orders for rules, with its uncertainty as to how your troops are going to go, this is just beautiful. The writing of orders makes a solitaire game so much easier because you have to focus and say, yeah, that's what I want them to do. And then you can forget about it, but then when you read it, and another game that does that is good old Fifth Frontier War, and a science fiction game. But after you read it, your orders, 2 turns later or something, you might be saying, well, why am I doing that? Well, it's okay. It's okay to get things kind of wrong like that, and it's actually the way that quite often it happens in a game anyway, is I kind of lose track of what I was doing somewhere, and other units are off doing something else, and I've got to kind of use them all properly. I guess my main disagreement with the game system is actually how likely it is, or how unlikely it is, for broad initiative to take place in it. In the American Civil War, generals every now and then would take initiative, and it wouldn't always be a good thing. There's a loose cannon rule, but it's pretty mild compared to what you can get off the initiative rolls as a player. And I've found it's generally worth risking the loose cannon rule. It's an interesting little one, Baton Rouge. This is, this by Richard Berg. Unfortunately, the components to it and some of the decisions where you've got pieces kind of on hex sides and other ones in hexes didn't work very well, but it's an interesting game covering the fighting in the city of Baton Rouge, which involved ironclads steaming down the Mississippi and getting involved in it. Blue and Gray, Road to Richmond, simple game, operational, wilderness battle. Oh, actually it's 7 days battle in the wilderness, yeah. Not much to say about this, except that it doesn't feel terribly much like Civil War, but I guess it doesn't feel terribly much like anything. This is the same system that gets used in the Napoleonic games, it's the same system that gets used in the World War II games, and it's about as colorless as the Avalon Hill Classics were. I find the Napoleonic ones a little bit more interesting, but that could just be flavor, could be map graphics, I don't know. Certainly find the older stuff of similar style, but with actual cannons firing on the field from Breitenfeld, from the 30 Years War Quad, a lot more interesting than these. I did the big 7 days battles from the Gamer series. I didn't go much into the game rules themselves, but you get to kind of picture. That was my first video done. Civil War, Victory Games. It's a classic. I generally pull this out and play it solitaire every couple of years. It's kind of a big game. I don't have a good grasp of how to play the Union in it, of course. But, and I've said this before, the leader system reminds me a lot of For the People. I had Mark Herman and a bunch of other people who like the CDGs get on my ass on that. And they may be right. It may just be that it feels the same to me, but then when you look at the particulars, it's not. But it does give that same impression. And anything that gives the impression of such a classic, it can't be a bad thing about it. So For the People, we do have a video on it, but it's my first time playing it, and I'm not sure how much you can gain from it, except maybe to see. I don't know how a CDG works with hexes. Actually, it doesn't have hexes in that one. It's Empire of the Sun that has the hexes. So yeah, it's a somewhat more detailed game than most CDGs, even the ones that like Clash of Monarchs or 30 Years War. Well, Clash of Monarchs especially, that I feel are really war games. I think For the People takes it a step further in that direction, into a really detailed war game. Civil War is clearly a war game. It's got kind of this detractor, the Western map. I probably won't play with that, although I often back up on that decision, just because it kind of takes you out of the focus of the game. There's too many points to be gotten in the far west, and it probably takes away from the game to put it there. I want to call this one out, another CWB one, Embrace an Angry Wind. This is the Franklin and Spring Hill campaigns with General Hood. Disciplining assaults. He is so high on drugs that he sends his own troops basically to certain death because they kind of screwed up the day before. Really, really interesting usage of the CWB system. And I've only played it once and only opposed. I'm really looking forward to getting that. Avalon Hills Gettysburg. I don't remember which version I have of this. There are many, many versions. I don't have the earliest. I probably have 77. I know it's got like 3 layers of rules, and they kept getting more and more complex. Hopefully I have the rules now. I think I ordered them from someone else. I hear weird noises. A House Divided, GDW. This is the first point-to-point game that I really remember, that I think happened. And it was, I never touched it because it looked like it was sold as truly the pure beer and pretzels game. And it really is, actually. I mean, we're talking an Axis and Allies level game here when it comes down to it, but without the stupid little plastic pieces. And maybe taking those plastic pieces away makes it kind of more enjoyable. One thing I have to say, when I compare it to something like the 30 Years War that came out in, I don't know if it was a war game or an S&T, there are multiple versions of these things, but it was Decision Games. I think it was a Miranda design. Probably just as simple and kind of colorless, but A House Divided, it feels okay to be that simple and colorless. Maybe the same feels for me for Axis and Allies. It really bugs me when we start going out of these incredibly popular subject matters that you want a lot of gateway gamers in. Look, you're not going to get gateway gamers, gateway war game players to be excited about 30 Years War. People who are into 30 Years War, people who are into War of Spanish Succession, they want a little bit of meat in their game. They don't want, at least this is my impression on it, they don't want a translation of these simple games. And Soldier Kings is a kind of fantasy translation of A House Divided. I believe that's also kind of a weak spot. Who's interested? First of all, it's 7 Years War, right? I mean, it's being sold as 7 Years War, but it's not. It's on some fantasy island. What segment of the population is going to be particularly interested in that game? Interesting choice. One that I don't understand why it was done. Lee versus Grant. This was a brilliant system. I'm looking forward to some of the other, the great campaigns in the American Civil War stuff. I have like 1 or 2 of them. Anyway, Lee versus Grant was really intriguing game. I got caught as Lee chasing Grant back to Richmond because he slipped around my line at one point. That was a really interesting game, and I had a hard time catching up to Grant on that. Both American Civil War and For the People cover the leaders in very nice detail with this kind of, actually I think For the People doesn't have promotion. Am I wrong there? I don't know. And that may be one of the big differences there between the two. But one of the things about American Civil War was the promotion aspect to the leaders, and it was great to see, hey, I want to get this guy into battle, see how he does. I want something a little bit better than that in the leader system. Actually, the leader system is one of the holes in American Civil War to me, but whatever. Or Civil War, whatever it is. Little Round Top. This was an Avalon Hill game, little tiny box. Tactical. To the extreme, where units are running out of ammo and having to scrounge it off dead bodies. It's never excited me very much. Mosby's Raiders, I had hoped this would be ambush being done in a Civil War background. It isn't. It's an interesting little solitaire puzzle, but there's nothing terribly there to promote it. I thought it was fun, but it's a solitaire game. It got a 5 from me for that, because I just have a real hard time with solitaire games. The old great battles of the American Civil War. Now this starts with the granddaddy of them all, Terrible Swift Sword. Terrible Swift Sword wasn't the first for me, though. The first for me was Wilson's Creek, and Wilson's Creek was so cool, and Terrible Swift Sword was its progenitor, and it was so big that it became sort of this icon for me. And years later, I pick up Terrible Swift Sword. No, I lied. The first one for me is actually Stonewall, which was immediately following Terrible Swift Sword in their design. I actually got that in my set of first 7 games. When I mentioned Ney versus Wellington earlier, Stonewall was the first game, not that I tried, but the first game that I succeeded in playing. And always had a special place for me. I like it and Terrible Swift Sword's graphics better than Wilson's Creek, Pea Ridge. I'd like to get Drive on Washington, still I don't have it. 7 Days, I mentioned I did this, the whole 7 Days, 7 Pines, Gainsburger Mill, I don't know what else, Champion Hill, that whole series. 9 big maps set up at once, that impressive just to look at, even if the video quality is crap. Strike Them a Blow, I haven't gotten to that yet. Okay. This Terrible Sound, a recent purchase for me. This is the Regimental sub-series. I have a couple now in it. Thunder, my favorite Gettysburg game of all. Even better than Terrible Swift Sword. Wilson's Creek. Wilson's Creek was always great. I mean, this was the first of the magazine sort of advanced ones. It always, I don't know, it didn't get as much play as Stonewall did, but I think it's actually a better battle, a better play out than it or Pea Ridge for something small. I've certainly had good luck with bringing that to new gamers. Not brand new gamers, but people who've played maybe a Napoleon's Art of War type battle and maybe Breitenfeld are ready for that next step up to the tactical fire combat. And to me, really, what you've got with kind of that whole set, the gamers stuff, the great battles of the American Civil War, this tactical move shoot type situation at the brigade or regimental level, whichever one you're at, feels a lot like Great Battles of History. No big shock there, right? You know, Richard Berg invented both of them in terms of making the genre of this level of detail. Sadly, Richard Berg was not involved in the Ney versus Wellington side or the Monmouth side. And I think that's kind of a shame. I think he could have probably captured that feel. Maybe he's just not interested in the period. Going back to those, the Battles of the American Revolution, for a lighter level game, I think really does a good job there at that tactical level. Napoleonic, the only one that I've seen is the Napoleon's Brigade series, Napoleonic Brigade series. I think that at every incarnation, but especially the third one, is the one that comes across closest to these Civil War ones. Not just the gamers, all of them. And this is why I'm kind of worried maybe if I got Wellington's victory I wouldn't be that thrilled. What I'd love to do is get something like Napoleon's Last Battles, but at the level of detail that the Napoleonic Brigade series sits at, or, you know, even a slightly lesser level that sits more in line, you know, with Terrible Swift Sword or whatever. Let me check the time for the Colonial games. As always, I run so long on these. I'm so, you know, there aren't a lot of Colonial games, so I'm going to hit these really quickly. So this spans sort of on both sides of the American Civil War. And I opened this up with the Alamo, which is this weird kind of 3D representation, and I can't wait to get that on the map, of ultra tactical level game. Again, not man-to-man, but fairly close. There aren't a lot of guys in the Alamo to defend it, but there is an infinite amount of Mexicans coming. Hopeless situation, you can't possibly win by holding them off, but the question is how long can you hold them off? Geronimo, this is such a weird game. It's about the extermination of the North American natives by the U.S. government, really. Now, what's really cool about this, and I've got my video on it, players are different tribes or the U.S. government on different terms. And so their goals are basically just gather as many points as you can grab on this turn with what you've got. You've got no long-term planning at all, which actually really fits the natives very well because they largely did not coalesce into alliances to defeat the government. And in a way, it nicely reflects the changing policies of the U.S. government. Along with it, it has this sort of card, I want to say card-driven because, damn it, it is. And this is a Berg game. One of these reachings, Berg does this throughout ever since Mark Herman came up with We the People and this, you know, huge, exciting new design. Well, Berg seems to have been reaching to try to do something like that. Now, he's already got a couple under his belt. Terrible Swift Sword, most notably, that are just, you know, these game changers for the entire hobby. Well, he's not been able to match that, but you keep feeling his attempts at it. And unfortunately, he just doesn't have the pulse on what the simple gamer what seems to like, and neither do I. I happen to like most of the stuff he puts out much, much better than the stuff that is liked by the simple player. I have this Go West by Phalanx. I did a video on it, a little Euro game. Halls of Montezuma I recently did. I'm not terribly thrilled with it. I gave it about a 5. My wife gave it a 2. This... it just didn't feel like there were that exciting decisions going on in it, is what it came down to. Pax Britannica, this is a lovely, lovely game. Not necessarily balanced, in fact, definitely not balanced, but this combination of diplomacy and worldwide, you know, dividing the world up at a very high level, but with these interesting kind of systems in place to help drive that position. Now, this is Greg Kostikin. Very, very interesting design here. Early kind of, not area, but it looks almost like the Twilight Struggle type map. You can see Twilight Struggle almost completely derived from this map. Very nice style of representation for what it was. And beautiful map, interesting different shaped pieces that helped you identify what's going on. When it comes down to it though, well, Britain can pretty much demand whatever the hell they want, and everybody has to give in to them, at least for the first couple turns. I think it's possible a little later for everybody to say no, go to hell, but the one time that I tried doing that ended up Britain winning, becoming the closest to losing that I've ever seen them manage without really Italy or someone else just being handed the game by other players. Remember the main... this is not a terribly enjoyable game, but it's such an interesting attempt. Who did this? I don't know. Vance Du Bois. I don't know who it is. This was one of those TSR SPI attempts, or S&T attempts. Really, really interesting little game, split between this sort of naval action on a large scale and these kind of blow up little maps for the operations on the islands of Cuba and Puerto Rico. Russa Turkish War. This is the Franco-Prussian War translated over to the War of 1887 to 88, I think. I've got 77 to 88, which I know is not the case. This is a really interesting system in an obscure war that maybe there's too many outside influences and too much chrome to be as interesting a game as people might want it to be. I find it kind of cool. Feels like almost like a CDG type style game with these chits being pulled ahead of time and put in your pile, and then you can play them as you like. But it doesn't, they're event chits. It doesn't have this ops event type feel to it. Soldiers of the Queen, a couple of tactical games. Again, I think TSR SPI, S&Ts. Not absolutely positive of this. Annoyingly glossy map counters. This was one of the problems I had with all of the TSR things, is the quality of the components just degraded so much. There was this nice matte counter and matte counters, matte map, kind of dull, toned back colors, and then TSR took it over, and they started putting out stuff that, you know, would have made West End Games proud. And really, you know, glossy on glossy counters rub off and disappear. The ink comes off them quicker. But my biggest objection, glossy maps that pooched more with glossy counters that slip on the gloss more. It just didn't work well, and it didn't look pretty. It didn't have the elegance of the old ones. Source of the Nile, old Avalon Hill game. Get to draw on the map. Anything you draw on the map is cool, right? You're exploring the interior of Africa. This is basically a multiplayer solitaire. Kind of what I hoped Age of Exploration would be like, except back when I got this, I had the patience to deal with the rules. Age of Exploration, I did not have the patience. I don't know that... I remember Source of the Nile's rules being painful, though, so I'm not going to say, it's definitely better. Veracruz, I've got to play this again. This is a game I've played maybe once in my life, Solitaire. This is an operational simulation of the campaign for Mexico City. And I've got listed that the game features national morale, leadership supply, diseases, all of this stuff from Halls of Montezuma. I remember it being more fun to play, but maybe taking a lot less details into effect, etc., and feeling more like a traditional war game. Alright, so that's the American Civil War and the colonial period. Since the colonial period kind of expands around the American Civil War, that makes sense. I'm going to very briefly look... I don't have time. I'm going to hit some of these 19th century other games, along with things like family games and stuff like that, I think. And by this I mean we're going to get the 18XX games in here, the crayon rails, all that stuff. I think can be all jumbled together into one big pile. All right, up this goes.